Okay, so look, if this is your first ReDriven video, the way we normally start our videos is with some, funny little quip about the car or an attempt at humour to engage you. But with the Range Rover Sport, this thing is so confusing. See, if you jump on any of the owners groups on Facebook or the forums online, you're going to be presented with thousands of Range Rover Sport owners that passionately love their Range Rover Sport and they've never ever had an issue. But then when you start digging into the common problems, honestly, it's insane. It feels like the car is some kind of automotive Stockholm syndrome. Like, Range Rover, what the hell have you done with this? Now guys, we're going to take you through all of this and so much more, but you know what? Strap yourself in because this is one hell of a story. Should you buy a Range Rover Sport? Let's find out. Now, during the life cycle of the Sport, Land Rover/Range Rover as a brand was kind of kicked around between different owners like a backyard footy. The initial concept of the Sport happened when BMW was in charge. However, when development and production began, Ford was the boss. But then Ford sold Land Rover/Range Rover to Indian automotive giant Tata right in the middle of the Sport's production cycle. Now, this may explain some of the issues that we'll cover shortly. Now, if you're hunting around on the used market, you're going to be presented with two iterations of the first generation or L320 Range Rover Sport. There's the pre-update 2005 to 2009 models that here in Australia were available with 2 oil burners and 2 petrol power plants. These engines then signify the variant, as you can see here, and there was also a limited 4.2 first edition. Now, this first iteration, it did receive a minor cosmetic update in 2008, but the big change came in 2009 with the Series 2. As well as a range of exterior changes, the interior and tech and features were updated, suspension, steering systems, and the entire mechanical package was revised. Even the model designations changed depending on the engine. However, these could then be available with not only a bewildering array of optional accessories, but also full enhancement packs. And like the Series 1, there was another minor cosmetic update in 2012. Now look, even though the vast majority of owners of these sports would never dream of taking them off-road, it's important to know that underneath all of this lays a whole bunch of modified Land Rover Discovery 3 parts, so these things are incredibly capable off-road. Okay, now let's talk about looks for a second. For me, Land Rover/Range Rover, and excluding the god-awful Evoque convertible, they always nail design for me. Like, this thing, I think it looks incredible. Like, there's a reason that they were, and to a certain degree are still, an aspirational vehicle, and so much of it comes down to the way it looks. In saying that, sometimes on the base spec models with the smaller wheels, it can look a bit under-wheeled, but especially in this spec, in this colorway, just nails it. All the geometric lines, looks like muscular and tough and purposeful. It almost looks like the car equivalent of a perfectly tailored suit. Although there are, quite a few issues with the exterior. We'll get to those soon. Now guys, I just have to pause for a second, honestly, pay some bills. If that bothers you and you love to hemorrhage money, just skip forward 30 seconds. Okay, first up, WIPERTECH. Guys, these are some of the best wiper blades in the business. They're easy to order online, they get shipped straight to your door, they're easy to install, and they work perfectly. And for 15% off and free express shipping, just click the link down there. And then next up, we have our finance partners, Driver. Look guys, unless you've got copious amounts of cash just lying about, chances are you're gonna have to finance your next car. You've got to do it through Driver. The whole process can be done easily online, there's no hidden fees, and you can get pre-approval in just minutes. Plus, compare the best deals from over 30 different lenders. And when you finance your car from that link down there, you're gonna get a free $150 fuel voucher. How awesome is that? Go to driver.com.au. Okay, now inside, it's kind of the same as outside. It is utterly beautiful in here and potentially quite flawed. Now, design-wise, it did change a little bit in that 2009 update. Here's what it used to look like, and this is a Series 2 interior. Also, the actual materials that you'll get, they're going to vary depending on the year model and the trim spec as well. And this particular car, honestly, wow. This thing even smells expensive. Everything you touch just feels so good. I love this color combination. I'm not normally into kind of brown and caramel kind of interior colors, but the actual color in here, fantastic. Even the materials like the wood grain trim, all of this metal work, there's some metal highlights here. All the buttons feel premium and good. It's so impressive in here. Also, another shout out to the designers, because I was expecting it to feel dated. Obviously it's not a current car's interior, but it's aging really gracefully. It still feels excellent. Now, ergonomics absolutely spot on. These seats are incredibly comfortable. There's loads of adjustability. Everything that you use is just a little hand reach away. Spot on for ergonomics. And then wear and tear in this particular sport, obviously this is going to vary depending on the sport you're looking at, but in this one, fantastic. Like even the texture on the armrests, there's still texture there. It hasn't gone on smooth and shiny. Steering wheel's in great nick. The actual leather itself, it's not hard. It feels soft and supple. Even like the stitching, like there's no wear and tear on the stitching. And then practicality up front, you've got massive sized door bins there. You've got this kind of roller shutter style little cubby hole for 3 cup holders, including a cup holder for small pretentious coffees like a double ristretto or an espresso, the coffees I like. There is unfortunately a cigarette lighter and an ashtray, which is disgusting. Not the ashtray, smoking is disgusting. In the center console of this car, firstly you've got like a little charging port for obviously an iPhone, and a little tray here with the owner James's sunglasses, Ray-Bans, very stylish James, well done. And this is removable for, yeah, that's a massive little storage cubby hole there, look at that, huge. And then, pull this back. Oh, don't want to break them, there we go. And then 2 glove boxes, one up here and another one down there, both pretty good size. That's it for practicality up front. Now in the back seat, and in relation to, let's say, the Range Rover Sport's most passionate and loyal demographic, I'm exactly 25 centimetres taller than another stylish, fashion-conscious mum, Victoria Beckham. This is in my driving position, and it's interesting. So the seats, I think, like, I don't know how many people have sat back here. I'm guessing not many, because the seats, they're a little bit on the firm side, like they need to be kind of worn in a little bit. And like knee room's okay, foot room's okay. It's honestly not as spacious back here as I was expecting, or as comfortable. It's not bad, just, I don't know, not as convincing as I'd hoped. But wear and tear back here, yeah, none. Like the leather, like the really fine texture on the leather is still all there. Again, obviously this is going to vary depending on the Range Rover Sport you're looking at, but in this one, it feels and smells like a brand new car. Okay, then practicality in the back seat. You've got your own air vents, you've got a little auxiliary input here and a power outlet, you've got a tiny, tiny little shelf, seat heaters, you've got map pockets, you've got door bins, but there's no chance you're actually getting to them if you've got legs because you can't get down in there. And then you've got an armrest, which is, yeah, not too bad. It's pretty comfy, there's enough stuff back here. Actually, one thing I forgot to mention, there's hardly any transmission tunnel, so even if you have like 3 people across here, yeah, you're not kind of having your legs up near your ears. That's a good thing. Okay, now before we get in the boot, I've got to say, these split tailgates are fantastic. I don't know why more SUVs don't have this. I've had these in a couple of my cars. Brilliant idea. And then in the boot, even somebody my size can fit back here super comfortably, and then lift the base of the rear seat up and fold them down. They do fold flat, and you get a 12-volt power outlet and some tie-down hooks. Super practical, as expected. Now when it comes to features, look, these things are loaded with equipment, and if we try to go through all of it in this video, we'd be here for hours. But even in the very early and base spec models, you're still going to have loads of stuff to play with. Like a very good 8-speaker sound system, dual zone climate control, leather everywhere, automatic headlights, a separately opening tailgate, cargo blinds, illuminated vanity mirrors. Look, the list just goes on and on. But if even that isn't enough, spec up to a more recent and top spec model, and it's more like, what don't you get? Brembo brakes, hydraulically activated computer-controlled anti-roll system, adaptive electronic dampers, terrain response that responds to terrain, perforated leather seats, directional headlights, front and rear parking sensors, reversing camera, Bluetooth connectivity, an incredible sounding 13-speaker Harman Kardon Logic 7 surround sound system, and so much more. Now guys, if you do need all of the specifics of the features, plus the safety coming up and like trim specs and all that sort of stuff, jump on ReDriven.com and check out the awesome and completely free ReDriven cheat sheet. Now look, as far as modern phone connectivity goes, look, most of these have Bluetooth, but they don't have Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. They're a bit old for that tech. In saying that, there are plenty of kits available where you can fit that kind of phone connectivity later on. But make sure you use quality components, because there are some horror stories when people kind of cut corners financially. Electronically, things can go wrong. Now, as far as safety goes, look, ANCAP never got around to testing one of these, so it doesn't have an ANCAP safety rating. But when you go through the features, it does feel like the Sport is doing everything it can to keep you safe and secure. But look, to take you through exactly what safety features that you can expect, we're going to cut to another voiceover, but this time it's going to be, let's say, another representative of another of the Sport's passionate and loyal demographic.
Oi, listen up, mate. You're going to get at least 6 bloody airbags, ABS, traction, rollover, electronic stability control and hill descent with this motor, innit? But if you splash out on one of them newer, fancier ones, you'll also get trailer sway control, a hill holder, and electronic brake force distribution. But all of that active safety kit with the autonomous braking that, nah, not for me, mate. I'll pass on that fancy stuff, do you know what I mean?
Okay, so what's it like to drive? Well, you know what? If you're test driving one of these, it's generally around this point that you really fall in love with the thing, especially if it's the V8. Even after all of these years and tens of thousands of kilometres, this thing still offers like everything you'd want and so much more from an SUV of this type. The power, is just delicious. It's linear and muscular and it has all this it feels like, I don't know, mid-range thrust the minute you flex that right foot. Also, this one, it's probably quick. In saying that, it probably feels quicker than it actually is, but again, all of that, it just adds to the charm. Even the gearbox, it's totally unobtrusive. It's never lost for gears, it's never a bit slow on the uptake, it's just smooth, does exactly what a transmission should. And then handling-wise, how it can tackle serious off-roading, but then handle as well as this, it's seriously impressive. Look, obviously it's not a performance car as such, but it doesn't really pitch and roll through the corners. It always sits relatively flat and controlled. And honestly, through some tight, twisty corners, it's fun. And then you've got the sound. Because this thing is so well insulated, all you're left with is the marvelous V8 soundtrack and a bit of wind noise once you pick up speed. But besides that, in this particular car, there are no rattles. There's no squeaks. Nothing sounds wrong. It's silent in here. And then you've got the steering, it makes it feel smaller than what it is. It still feels like a large SUV, but smaller than a large SUV. Now look, like the vast majority of owners of these, we're not going to be taking it off-road because it's not ours and we're obviously in Sydney. But the fact that it can, honestly dominate all sorts of terrain, yet is completely easy to deal with in traffic and then can hum along on the freeway with total grace, it's still so impressive. It's so utterly enjoyable to drive no matter what the scenario. It's always confident, it always feels planted, and it's never ever harsh until you hit a really, really serious bump, but that's the same with most cars. Okay, so if you bought one of these brand new and you still own it, our condolences, because my God, haven't you hemorrhaged some money? Now, to give you an idea of the depreciation, if you bought a brand new 2011 V8 supercharged autobiography, brand new, that was asking here in Australia around about $180,000. That same car today, and this is being honestly pretty optimistic, is going to ask around about $40,000. That's $140,000 lost in value in just, 12 years, 11, 12 years, something like that. That equates to about $1,000 a month, and that's even before the cost of maintenance and petrol and consumables like tyres and brakes and all that sort of stuff. Insane. Now, speaking of maintenance and consumables, the OEM parts on these, they can ask a huge premium. But do your homework, because there's a whole bunch of aftermarket non-OEM parts that are quite often cheaper and also quite often better build quality than what Land Rover could come up with. So you can save yourself some money. Also, depending on what goes wrong with it, which we'll get to in a second, these are a very complex piece of kit. So any jobs, even minor jobs, can take a long time because you've got to get through a whole bunch of stuff and time costs money. And again, being a premium product, a lot of times repairers will ask a premium. Also, just on that, don't think that you've got to go to a Land Rover dealership to get anything done on these, even servicing, because we have heard a few horror stories when it comes to Land Rover dealerships and servicing and maintenance and repairs. You're probably better off going to an independent specialist. Also, these things, they do weigh a lot, so they're pretty heavy on consumables like tyres and brakes and all that sort of stuff. But then in saying that, to get the best out of them, you've got to use premium tyres and premium brakes and premium consumables, and guess what? They ask a premium. Look, basically, if you're not losing money through depreciation, you're going to be spending it on fuel and consumables and maintenance and pretty much everything else. Now, welcome to the most heartbreaking aspect of the video, but before any of you Range Rover Sport fans start screaming at us in the comments going, you don't know what you're talking about, anything that you don't like from here on in, it's your fault. See, to research this video, we trawled through owners forums, we joined owners groups and spoke to Range Rover Sport owners, and we spoke to Range Rover and Land Rover specialist mechanics. So if you don't like anything coming up next, go and scream at them, not us. Okay, so what goes wrong with these? Guys, are you comfy? Get comfy, because here we go. Now look, there should be no rust on any of the body panels, but in really cold climates, they are susceptible to rust and corrosion underneath. So get under there, have a look. In particular, look under any of the plastic trim and especially under the fender protectors. And then anything with electricity running to it has reported issues of problems and failures. We're talking power folding mirrors, the parking sensors, the door locks can fail, and the head and taillights can all have issues. Now, if you can't open the tailgate, sometimes it's the switch that's faulty, but other times it can be the wiring. Basically, if you're in the market, just make sure everything that has electricity running to it actually works. Then models fitted with like the detachable tow bar, there's some problems with the electronics surrounding that whole thing. So sometimes when you attach a trailer or take it off, basically anything with that, because of the faulty electronics, it can play havoc with some of the lighting. Now there are some issues and complications with the parking brake. It can make all sorts of horrible grinding and weird noises. If you let that go unchecked, it can get really bad. There are plenty of stories of owners being stranded in the middle of nowhere because this thing's locked on. And then we come to all of the issues with water leaks, starting with the sunroof. Now this isn't specific just to Range Rover Sports. This can affect any car with a sunroof, but the drainage holes can get clogged with leaves and crap. It should be relatively easy to fix. You just hit it with some compressed air, but the Range Rover Sport has quite a specific problem. There's a drainage hose that runs down this A-pillar and it comes out behind this vent. It should kind of fall out like into this panel here, but the problem is the rubber, or more the tip of the rubber hose, over time it just falls to pieces and the rubber hose falls inside kind of this body cavity. The problem is it's directly above this section and that's where the main wiring loom for the car goes. And as we all know, water and electricity, they're not mates. Worst case scenario, there are plenty of reports of the water getting all over the car's ECU, and that causes all sorts of problems. Then there are reports that the rear spoiler can delaminate, and even the coating on this pillar, it can turn to crap. This plastic windscreen cowling behind the windscreen wiper blades here, it can warp with age, and then water gets in there, it gets into the HVAC system and the electronics, and all sorts of shit happens. Now guys, we should mention that a lot of these problems, we have found that they're far more common on the pre-update sports, even though the post-updates can be guilty of some of these issues as well. Okay, now inside, I'm sorry guys, things don't get any better. Now some of the earlier sports that are located in really hot climates, like here in Australia, the dashboards can crack, especially around the passenger airbag area. And then there's plenty of issues with like sagging headliners and the fabric on the A-pillars kind of coming loose. Most of those can be pretty easily fixed with a quality upholsterer, but if you want to get a whole new dashboard, understandably, that's going to be expensive. Oh, I should mention as well, that dashboard problem, it really only happens on the pre-update cars. From 2009 onwards, all of this changed. These ones don't really have that problem. Now the air conditioning condenser failing, it's a pretty common problem. If the one you're looking at hasn't had that done, be warned, if it goes, it can be like up to a 5-hour job because a lot of the front of the car has to come off. Now, if the Sport you're looking at has like auto dip headlights, the sensor for that is up in the, like basically the rear view mirror. If that sensor goes bad, well, you've got to get a whole new rear view mirror. That's going to be expensive. Even more expensive is that it then has to sometimes be rewired and recalibrated. We've seen bills over $1,200 just for that. Then there are quite a few reports of the fuel gauge reading incorrectly. We know this because there were plenty of owners online that complained of just being stranded in the middle of nowhere with no petrol, even though the car was saying it had petrol. Now on some of the pre-facelift models, like the soft touch texture that's on some of the HVAC controls, it can devulcanize, like come off. That's actually what it's called, devulcanizing. Sounds cool, it isn't. Then with the infotainment system and basically anything that's powered by electricity, so like power windows, door lock actuators, power seats, honestly, the entire interior really, there are loads of reports of issues and problems and gremlins with all of those. Now, best case scenario, it might just be like a software update that can fix some of these things. Other times it can be a deeper, darker wiring issue or even an ECU issue, and all of those, they can cost a fortune to replace and repair and fix. But the really scary stuff relates back to some of the exterior problems, water leaks, because a lot of these electronic gremlins can be caused due to like mysterious water leaks in behind panels and the firewall and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, you don't want to know what it costs to suddenly pull a dashboard out to go hunting for a random water leak. Not nice. Now, okay, if that all wasn't bad enough, mechanically, what can go wrong with these? Look, I don't want to take you through it, and I can't because I'm not a qualified mechanic, but Jim's going to do it.
I'm just going to start out by saying here that in this category, in this sector, these statistically are the most unreliable vehicles you can get. Now, that's okay for some, and it's even perfect for those who love spending their entire weekend sorting out problems. And it's also great for those of you who love to see your mechanic pay off his mortgage or send their kids to private school, or even better, buy race car parts. Perfect for that. And some of those problems, well, I'll start with the V6 diesel first. That is the forward engine, and that is a well-documented shitbox. Has problems with oil coolers, EGR complications, has problems with the high-pressure fuel pumps, it has problems with water pumps, it has problems with the oil pump failing, it just goes on and on. And the big one, well, that is the bottom end failure from big end bearings, main bearings, and sometimes the crankshaft even breaks in half. Yeah, good one. And if you're completely mechanically inept, that means complete catastrophic engine failure. And if you're financially inept, that means thousands of dollars. The V8 diesel, well, it is marginally better than the V6 with possibly less bottom end catastrophic failures, but more top end catastrophic failures from timing chains breaking and camshafts mistiming and, you know, absolute annihilation of the top end. Onto the earlier 4.2 and 4.4 litre petrols, and I'm going to group them together because they share a lot of components and problems. The most common problem being in these is timing chain related, where the guides break and the cams miss time and causes, again, catastrophic camshaft and top end engine annihilation. Sometimes less serious, the supercharger coupling can fail, but that's really nothing compared to the other problems. The later model 5 litre V8s, both the NA and the supercharged versions, well, they're really no improvement on the earlier models. They too suffer from, guess what? Yep, timing chain issues, and also very expensive to fix. I'm just going to loop back to the V6 diesel for a second. That actually runs a cam timing belt rather than the chain, so it's spared the catastrophic timing chain nightmare. The belt on that is due every 165,000 Ks, but I would strongly recommend doing it at least probably every 120 just to be safe. But all of the other engines have timing chains, and they are all prone to failing. Now, if you're lucky enough to catch a timing chain problem before it causes a catastrophic engine failure, all of those chains can be repaired in situ because they're at the front of the engine and sort of easy to get at. But if you don't and it causes a catastrophic engine failure, which it usually does, well, the engine has to come out, which is not usually a huge drama, but in this case, there's a catch. You've got to lift the entire body off the chassis to get at it. Now, it's not uncommon these days to have to drop entire subframes to get engines and gearboxes out. And I'm looking at you, Audi and BMW, with your stupid piss-weak timing chains. But taking the whole body off the chassis is just next level and kind of ridiculous. And it's not just engine failures that require that. On the V8 turbo diesel, you have to take the body off the chassis just to change the turbos, which, by the way, is a common failure point. All of them, across models with all of the engines, they all have very fragile cooling systems with water pumps and thermostats that are often a problem. So keep an eye on that. The engine bay electronics and all the plastics are very fragile too. Now, back to the catastrophic engine failures. Look, you can mitigate the risk of that happening by servicing these things properly. Now, the problem here is a lot of people think they are by sticking to the service interval, which is 26,000 kilometres. That is utter madness. If you want it to last and you're planning on keeping it, you have to service it every 10,000 kilometres. That way you maybe slightly reduce the risk. Now, if all those serious engine problems haven't scared you off, look, there are also plenty of problems with the air suspension systems, the drivetrain can be problematic, and there's electronics and software issues, and the list just goes on and on. And yeah, look, there is someone in the comments right now typing how they've had one, it's got 300,000 Ks on it, it's the best car they've ever had. Well, yeah, I hear you, but you know what? They are on borrowed time because it is going to break.
Now guys, look, just like James that owns this particular sport and has been awesome enough to lend it to us, James, you're a legend, he's never had any dramas or issues with this sport. There are thousands of these things out there that have never ever had any of these issues. But in saying that, what we've just covered, they're the more common faults and problems. When we went digging, the lists of weird and sporadic issues, it's terrifyingly long. Plus, Land Rover and Range Rover quite often, actually let's say all the time, end up in the worst end of the group of reliability ratings and customer satisfaction surveys. So there's a reason that Land Rover and Range Rover are often regarded as one of the worst brands when it comes to quality and reliability. That's how it is, I'm sorry. But still, when you ignore all of that, it's a bloody lovely car. Okay, so look, should you buy one? Look, that's going to depend on your personal financial situation, your levels of, let's say, vehicular or brand loyalty, and your tolerance for frustration. See, like no matter what Range Rover Sport you're looking at, whatever the price, it would be advantageous to have a spare $15,000 put aside for any issues that might arise. Look, hopefully you won't have to dip into that the Range Rover has had another tantrum account, but even if the worst were to happen, at least it's going to be somewhat financially diluted. However, if you don't have, say, a spare $15,000 lying around and your, I suppose, tolerance for frustration isn't like a personal strength, my God no, you should not buy one of these. When they've been fastidiously maintained, they can potentially be a truly great SUV, but miss a service or two or cut corners with maintenance, and my God, they can be horrific. Either way, no matter what financial position you're in, unless you're some sort of like a sadomasochist, we repeat, do not buy any Range Rover Sport that is missing service records, has any question marks over its history, or has even the slightest evidence of abuse, mistreatment, or a lack of regular care and maintenance. Look, when the asking price is really low, we totally understand the temptation, but the problem is it's probably going to cost you big time in the future. Look guys, we cannot say this strongly enough. There are those unicorn examples out there just like this one that have never had a problem and probably never will have a problem. And if you can verify categorically that the previous owner or owners have maintained it fastidiously and you are extremely financial, overall, it's a cautious maybe. And now this brings us to the question, would you buy one of these or would you buy something else? What would you buy? Let us know in the comments below. We'll see you next time. But the risk of things going horribly wrong, there are those examples out there just like this. Now, if you are hunting, it's like hunting.
But you know what? They are oh, damn it, nearly had that.
Look guys, we cannot say this strongly enough. There are those unicorn examples out there. What the